Greetings and star blessings. Let's talk about Mercury, the old, young brother, winged little messenger who's always very, very interesting to follow. Remember, he's the only god that entered all the different spheres, hence being called the messenger, the god of messages. So he's always very interesting to observe. He's a very tricky little guy. Very tricky little guy. And at the moment, he's actually building up towards this conjunction with Pluto, which is why I want to talk about it. Just briefly, this is going to be a quickie. And so let's jump straight into the chart. So what I want to highlight just briefly is, well, first of all, the conjunction between Mercury and Pluto, because that's a very, very interesting conjunction. We've had many cycles of that, by the way, over many, many years, because think about it, Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008. So Mercury, has done this loop, catching up to Pluto every year in Capricorn, right? So it's not a new occurrence, but that we always need to consider it from the point of where we are at any moment. That is, well, where are we today? We're probably at a somewhat different place in our own mind, in our thoughts, in our life in certain ways to where we were a year ago when Mercury was in Capricorn again. So it's just, it's always about the current circumstances and how that narrative speaks to the as above, so below, as within, so without, as the soul, so the universe. One of my favorite quotes outside of every sinner has a past, every saint has a past rather, and every sinner has a future. The other one is hell is empty and all the devils are here. That's by Shakespeare. Love that quote. Those are my three favorite quotes that I just mentioned. Okay. And I guess it's appropriate because it's Mercury, quotes, captions, little sentences, quotes. That's a mercurial type of thing, isn't it? So, okay, here is Mercury at 24 degrees of Capricorn. So he's been building his track, up towards Pluto for the last several days, actually. And he still hasn't reached the exact conjunction. that will happen soon, but it is absolutely within range at the moment, and in fact has been for a few days. So Mercury-Pluto is, well, first of all, I guess we need to also consider the fact that this is happening in Capricorn, right? And Capricorn is a sign from that general let's say personality level, for lack of a better word, really speaks to a consensus mind state, if you like, right? It is Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, which corresponds to this consensus reality. The other thing, before I unpack some of these themes, just have a think about where Mercury is transiting your chart at the moment. It will be wherever Pluto is, and it will be wherever Capricorn is in your chart. And also, one thing I like to remind people of, any transit you are actually looking at, you're always going to gain a lot more insight about any transit relative to you, your life, your chart, your circumstances, when you go back to looking at, well, where was Mercury at your birth? Meaning, what house was it in, for instance? Just even start with that, because whatever house placement Mercury is in for you natally, that is the area of life that carries an overall theme of how Mercury works for you, what you are thinking about a lot of the time, your mental focus, your style in thinking, how you communicate, what you communicate a lot about, and so forth. It's going to always come back to where is the natal position of this transiting planet we are looking at, because it carries with it that energy as it, races around your chart, as it were. It's always an important point to think about. So Mercury in Capricorn is a pretty traditional kind of mindset. It's not one that thinks out of the square, out of the box. It's very reserved in its thoughts, quite cautious and pretty serious about business and the matters it discusses on that point or communicates or thinks about, right? And so when I see a Mercury-Pluto conjunction, often the first thing that comes to mind is there's a couple of things. First of all, it's a brilliant signature for the investigative mind. It's the investigator. It's a powerful signature for diving very deep into our own unconscious material within our own psyche. It's an instigator or an activator for uncovering certain material. That could be, for example, that could be a letter, a document, an email, a conversation, whatever it is. This energy opens that zone for us to investigate quite deeply if we want to, whatever the matter is that we are looking at, right? Now, on a collective level, that this is going to speak to a lot of things being exposed relative to governments, information, documents, systems, and so forth, because Pluto is the one that exposes all the BS, literally all the time. So whatever systems in play, have been holding on to some material, documents, information, keeping a tight lid or keeping it in a very controlled format, which is Capricorn. Well, now that Mercury is there with Pluto, a lot of things can be uncovered and exposed, and indeed they are. You just need to take a look around outside of the commercialized news and media, and you can discover quite a bit of information and truths that are not in the consensus reality, not offered on the table by any means in the consensus reality. The challenging thing with investigating and researching information nowadays, because of the advancement of technology and everyone having access to, well, just about everyone having access to being able to write and speak and say whatever they like, as it were, there can be a lot of misinformation that's given, and that's across the board in consensus and out of consensus reality as well. That applies to everyone, really. So for that reason, we have to be, I think, very discerning with the material that we come across, and sort of don't take it for granted that it's 100% accurate, but follow through with our own research or investigation on whatever it is we are exploring, trying to understand or trying to uncover. So Mercury-Pluto speaks to all these sorts of themes at the moment. And, on a personal level, this is really intense communications, conversations. It can bring up sibling matters, of course, because Mercury corresponds to siblings. Any stream in your life that corresponds to the written or spoken word is Mercury. So Pluto gives us the advantage of breaking through, delving deeper into any information that we are investigating. That's kind of like the positive takeaway, if you like. And then on the other hand, it can also be an activator for obsessive thinking, being caught in a loop of a particular stream of thought or an idea or a conversation you had or something somebody said, and just being really, sort of obsessed about, not being able to let that thought go. It obviously has those attributes to it as well. But I think from an evolutionary perspective, this is the breaking down of conditioned thoughts. and conditioned thoughts that do not foster a pathway for us to liberate our mind, to think outside of the box, to ask questions, to not be satisfied with, this person said that, so it must be correct, right? To think for ourselves as opposed to being told how and what to think and perceive this life, situations, information, and so forth. Capricorn takes us into that place where we can be really boxed in, cornered in, a particular perception. And with Pluto there, it's always going to speak to transforming any conditioned perceptions and thoughts that we may hold. Now, this might be from material that we've held for a lifetime or lifetimes, or it could just be in the last few months, or it could just be in the last few weeks. It's obviously going to vary based on the individual and where this transit is occurring in your chart as well. Because the house placement has got a lot to say about what Pluto is going to dig up, help you dig up, relative to zooming in with the eagle eye and delving very deep into uncovering the truth of the matter, whatever that matter may be. So let's just have a quick read of some of these key themes here. So Mercury, Pluto, passionate and probing mind, deep insight into emotional causes and motivations, an interest in criminology or depth psychology, a gift for persuasive communication. Now, these comments apply to a natal Pluto-Mercury aspect, and obviously they also carry through to a transit as well, except the transit is there for a short period of time and the natal configuration is there for life, right? But these are the sorts of themes that are born out of a Mercury-Pluto aspect in either way. Persuasive communication is a really big one because there are certain people in this world that sometimes you might say they have the gift of the gab. They are incredibly impressive and persuasive and have this kind of enigmatic sort of presence about them. When they speak, they capture your attention. That's Pluto Mercury. People who study psychology, criminology, people who are interested in researching lots of different fields, really, but things that take us into the occult, for example, investigating or researching serial killers, things like that. That would be, Pluto Mercury, for example. It takes us into those darker shades of life and those unconscious components of our own psyche as well. So there can be something really deep and profound that's revealed to you at this time with a Mercury-Pluto aspect, and it could have to do with your own self and your own journey. It could have to do with things you are studying or researching. It could have to do with communications you're having with a person or persons. There's numerous examples. Mental struggles and obsessions, fear of one's dark or shadow thoughts. That's another pretty prominent theme. Harmful and destructive communication, aggressive dogmas and beliefs, crude speech. All those are possibilities as well. It depends. If you've got a political person, say, for instance, who's, giving a media talk, on some big issue at the moment, and this aspect is really oozing out of them. The energy is oozing out of them because it activates things in their own chart, for example, or Pluto's on their sun, or whatever it may be. This can be a very persuasive individual that holds tremendous power, in their words and the delivery of what they have to say, and that persuasiveness is is a powerful thing, and it doesn't necessarily mean that what they are saying is true either. You know, that's the interesting thing about Pluto. When one is operating through Pluto from that personality level, it takes on those shadow qualities that have to very much do with being manipulative. Pluto is the master manipulator, literally the master manipulator. I've seen it in many people that I've known in my personal life, famous people across the spectrum. You know, it's there, you can see it. Character and themes: a passionate and probing mind, a potential blending of willpower and intellect, a relentless and profound curiosity, a gift for deep analysis and questioning, penetrating insight into emotional causes and motivations, an ability to recognize the deeper significance in small details, urges to get to the bottom of problems, the probing instincts of a sleuth or detective, an interest in depth psychology or criminology, a study of the shadow side and psyche. We've sort of covered that. Intense and powerful criticism, the destructive effect of truth, the breakdown of old philosophical models or certainties, a transformed point of view, exploded beliefs, the need for change, bulldozed a road down the center of my mind. Dark comedy, those sorts of things. The shadow qualities, a tendency toward mental fixation and struggle, fear of polluting one's mind with dark, heavy images, obsession with one train of thought, extreme or fanatical opinions, a mind ready to explode, bad attitudes, antagonistic beliefs, harmful and destructive comments, aggressive dogma and propaganda, tendencies toward mental domination, intellectual power struggles, desire to change other people's minds forcefully, urges to impose one's intellectual or philosophical model on the world, an inclination to ask questions or make others confess, an interrogative style of speaking. This is like the perfect combination for someone, you know, for a police officer, investigative officer who's interrogating somebody for an alleged offence, for example. This is like the cop that's going to break that person down, as it were, most likely. It's a very, very interesting aspect. Okay, let's see. That's pretty much it. You know, the rest of it is just kind of a little bit repetitive, so I'm not going to describe any more. So those are just some themes to kind of consider, you know, when Mercury Pluto comes up. And the other issue actually, or point, which I think is really crucial, is that Pluto's position at the moment, 2851 of Capricorn, Pluto from here on is just going to move forward until he reaches 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is in March. So Pluto is at a point in the archetype of Capricorn at the moment where he hasn't been before, and where we haven't experienced it this lifetime. And the last time it was at this degree would have been 248 years ago. So there's something from an evolutionary perspective really important that's finishing, completing, right? And Mercury catching up to Pluto in this aspect is involved in that. So this must have something to do with information on that collective stream that's coming to a completion, a complete breakdown and completion for the new birth, the new earth that's coming, actually. So this is quite profound from a collective human family level, and also from our own individual evolutionary level. And because, as I said, Pluto is at this position at the moment and will not get back there again. So there's something really powerful completing here beyond our left brain comprehension. You know, it's not left brain information and details. It goes much deeper into very, very deep structures conditioned structures that have been in play for a very, very long time. So there's something very deep finishing, something karmic clearing. And by the 12th of February, Mercury ingresses into Aquarius. And I love that. I think even though Mercury is said to have no dignity or debility in the sign of Aquarius, one thing that I have noticed by observation is that Mercury in Aquarius is such a brilliant place for Mercury. There's a few reasons for that, and the most obvious reasons are that Mercury is a planet of the intellect, of our left linear mind, and Aquarius is an air sign, meaning corresponding to the mind, thinking faculty, cerebral component of our mind, but it's at a more advanced level because it's Aquarius. So it has that futuristic, innovative, lots of wisdom, lots of insight, and one of the biggest things, the absolute power in objective thinking and seeing the bigger picture and thinking about it in a larger context from the point of view of the entire human race. So it's not personal thinking. Personal thinking would be Mercury in Leo, which is the opposite sign to Aquarius. Objective thinking in its purest form really is Mercury in Aquarius. It's an incredible place for Mercury. So I love it when Mercury goes into Aquarius. That's a great time to be studying astrology, for instance. One thing I forgot to mention, actually, and even though Mercury is in Aquarius here, it's still conjunct Pluto, and it will be for quite a few days, because even though it's in a different sign, it's still very, very close to Pluto. So I would go as far as even up to here, possibly here, more so here. So even up to the 18th of February. So we could say for, most of February, Mercury's been hanging around Pluto in two different signs, in Capricorn and in Aquarius. The shift from Capricorn into Aquarius is quite noticeable, and it really does speak to liberating our mind, liberating our thinking, thinking beyond the box, beyond the square, beyond the consensus state, Capricorn. So Mercury in Aquarius conjunct Pluto is going to be a brilliant, it's the same themes once again, because we're talking about the two same planets, but in this instance, we're talking about Mercury in Aquarius, which is a sign that has the ability to be totally and utterly free in its thinking. And in fact, that's where it thrives. It thrives in free thought, free speech, the delivery of communication, information that concerns humanity overall from a point or a position that doesn't have a state of conditioning attached to it, but rather it's more interested in seeing what's fair, what's just, what's equal, what serves all of humanity in this information, right? Whereas in Capricorn, it's a very different story. So when Mercury dances through Aquarius, it is a great time for our own sense of inner liberation within our own mind and thoughts. And like I said, actually studying astrology and things like that is great when Mercury is in Aquarius. Again, I've just remembered a point that I forgot and I went to mention twice, so I'll mention it now. Mercury-Pluto aspect conjunction, because it's there for most of February, it is a great time for people who are interested in psychotherapy. That is you might be working in that field, you might be studying in that field, or you may want to sit with a person who's a therapist, who's a counselor, who's some kind of healer. It doesn't have to be conventional, traditional psychotherapy, psychoanalysis. It can be, but it can be just any person that is some kind of practitioner in the field of healing. Because with this aspect in play, there's a lot of potential for uncovering and breaking down, even just in your own mind and your thought patterns. And with the assistance of a practitioner, you may just have really powerful insights coming through the Pluto-Mercury aspect. So uncovering much deeper templates, deeper psychological perspectives and templates that you hold within yourself, as it were, and you're in a position where you're ready to work through those themes, those mindsets, those ideas, those deep penetrating thoughts or obsessive thoughts or thoughts from the past that haunt you, that you have kept a secret to yourself, but you're at a point where you need to air it out. You need to share it with somebody to get to have that space to be able to relieve that of yourself, release it, purge it, Mercury, Pluto, purging. So it's a very powerful time to be sitting with some kind of practitioner with this particular aspect. There's that, and then there's, of course, just doing your own mental purging, So those are the main thoughts. And also Mercury is going to go retrograde on the 21st of April this year in the sign of Taurus. I'll come back to talk about that at a later stage. But I think Mercury is doing retrograde in earth signs this year. I think it's all earth signs from memory. And the first retrograde cycle, which occurs on the 21st of April, Mercury will be in Taurus, so it will be conjunct Uranus. Now, Uranus would have moved on a bit from this degree that you see here. I had a look at it, they're only a few degrees apart. So that's going to be a very interesting Mercury retrograde cycle, taking in with it the Uranus energy. I'll come back to talk about that, because think about it, Mercury, Uranus, both planets have to do with the mind in different ways. Left brain, right brain, logical brain, intuition, Uranus, right brain, Uranus, Mercury, left brain, logic, etc. So anyway, that's coming up in April. It's not too far away. I will come back to talk about that. But I think for now, for the next few days, week or so, 10 days, whatever it is, just have a think about how you could utilize this energy to get the most benefit out of it for yourself. And also, if it activates things that are a little bit uncomfortable or that you don't like, to be aware of it, observe it, notice it, try and realize what's coming up and why it's coming up, and that it might be important from the point of view of being able to release something very powerful in your own mind that troubles you, that you've been holding on to, that's a conditioned perspective and so forth. It's not to be underestimated, because the thing is that Mercury, Pluto it's so powerful, because we have about 65,000 or 70,000 thoughts per day. So if that is a fact, which I believe it is, then the aspect of who we are as an individual in our everyday life, from the point of view of our mind and our thoughts, it colors so much about just even how we're going to feel when we wake up, how our day is going to unfold, because of the type of thoughts that we are having, because of what we are focused on mentally, and because of just the absolute overload of information at our fingertips, and the insatiable part of the mind that just can't switch off. You know, the Geminis out there in the world, you know, they would struggle the most in switching off. I've heard so many Geminis say, I simply cannot meditate. I simply cannot sit still and go into a zone where I have no thought. It's virtually impossible. And I believe them that it would be, it's not impossible, but I believe them that in their experience, it feels impossible. Even for those that are not Geminis and so forth, or have Mercury in Gemini, it does help us to be able to tune out of the mind. So even though the Mercury Pluto is indicative of delving deeper, we can participate in some kind of exercise with that in a different way to the way our mind normally works, which is that we're not aware of the thoughts that are coming in. They just come in, just like the clouds come and they leave. Where do clouds come from? Do we control any of those clouds? You know, whatever. It's healthy for us to be able to monitor our thoughts without identifying with them. That's actually a really big key. To observe what's coming up, monitor without identifying. In other words, the stillness that exists in between thoughts, there's these little gaps in between thoughts where there's nothing, absolute stillness. And when we're able to capture that through a meditative practice or process, that's when we are probably at the most peaceful place, actually, because our mind disturbs us quite a lot, depending on our thoughts, of course. I mean, if we're having blissed out thoughts 24/7, you know, good luck to you. I highly doubt it, though, because it's virtually impossible. So just some things to consider with Mercury, Pluto. Okay, I'll see you guys very, very soon with more, much love, brother, and many star blessings. Bye for now.